if you were a pedophile, if you were a pervert, would you do anything different than the state of Washington is doing right now? Than Democrats in Washington state are doing right now? And this is an issue that continues to get national attention. I mean, I haven't seen a controversy stick to the Democratic Party in our state almost ever like this. It's been a very bad week, certainly for Senator Jamie Peterson, the Senate Majority Leader, but also just by and large. You've seen, I think, this swell of pushback and a lot of continued national media attention toward the Democratic effort to erode parental rights. And I want to be very clear here, because I think there's some conservatives online who are always like, they must be a pedophile if they're supporting these policies and these things. I'm not calling any of these Democrats pedophiles, obviously. I don't want to get sued, but I also have no evidence that they're pedophiles. But what I do believe is, if you were a predator and you were in charge of state government, I just don't see what they would be doing different. And there's multiple things that I would point to. We just discussed on the show yesterday, for some reason, Democrats are pushing a bill that would ease post-incarceration requirements for individuals who try to have sex with minors, rape minors that they meet online. Like internet sex predators, the people Chris Hansen used to seek out. Why is that a priority? Why is that something that you're thinking of? I mean, literally making excuses for people who are caught up in these net nanny stings, where they think that they're meeting a minor for sex and it turns out to be a cop. And in the eyes of Democrats, that's not as bad. It's so strange. And then you see this systematic stripping of parental rights, where it seems like the government is doing everything it can to put distance between parents and their kids and step in the role of parents, both in public schools and as the government. Oh, you want to get an abortion, you want gender-affirming care, well, go ahead and run away from home. Senate Bill 5599, which is already law, will protect you. We can have you in a shelter. The government knows where you are, but we won't tell your parents where you are. I mean, I genuinely mean this. I genuinely mean this. If you were a predator and you were in state government, would you be pushing different bills? No, this is the kind of stuff that you would be doing. And so it's incredibly concerning. And I mentioned it's been a very bad week for Senator Jamie Peterson. Just as a reminder, he, for whatever reason, does an interview with Fox News about this Democratic effort to unwind the Parental Bill of Rights that was passed last year via a voter initiative to the legislature. And he has two cuts in this Fox News story that people found, understandably, very disturbing.
Kids over 13 have the complete right to make their own decisions about their mental health care. Parents don't have a right to have notice. They don't have a right to have consent about that. Young women have, if they're old enough to get pregnant, they're old enough to make their own decisions about what happens with their bodies, okay? And parents do not have the right to change that or make a different decision or be notified in advance.
I think there was a couple things about that interview that just won't die for Senator Peterson. I mean, here in Washington, we've known that they completely disregard parental rights, that they've been giving over many, many years more and more rights to even young children as young as 13. So what he said there isn't a particular surprise to us. I think a lot of people nationally looked at it like that is very extreme, because that is an extreme position to take. But in Washington state, this is just par for the course. But I think it was the way in which he said it too. Like, of course, 13-year-olds, they're old enough to get pregnant and they're old enough to make their own decisions. We'll have more on that in a minute. 13-year-olds, parents have no right at all to know what their kids are doing. It was really the way he said it. This just complete sanctimony and disregard for why would parents ever think they have a right to know what's going on with their kids mental health wise or from a medical perspective or whatever it is. And so, of course, those clips blew up online. And Senator Jamie Peterson has made a couple efforts now to try to put out the flames. The first thing he did is, of course, his office was inundated with emails, and he responded to all of those emails with a single line. Basically, don't blame me. This has been the law in Washington state for 40 years. I was just telling Fox News what the law is, which is just a cop-out. And as we've said over and over, does not reflect the reality that, yes, we passed a law in 1985 that gave kids access to certain mental health care without parental consent, but it was very mild stuff like, hey, you have a right to sit down with a therapist if you need to. You can get treatment for addiction if you need to, or see someone about addiction. What he doesn't capture in that little line that he sent out, because he can't be bothered to explain his position or defend his position to all these people who inundated his office with emails, is that over many years, Democrats and Senator Jamie Peterson himself have voted to expand what kinds of things and what kind of mental health care that these kids can get without parental consent. Now stuff like gender dysphoria and gender hormone therapies all bunched in with what were really mundane mental health things passed in 1985. So it was very disingenuous. So that didn't work. And the anger over this did not die down with his little one-sentence emails to, oh, I'm just saying what the law is. So who do you turn to as a Democrat in a state like ours when you are trying to shift the narrative? Who do you turn to as a Democratic politician when you are under scrutiny and you want to change the narrative? You turn to your buddies in legacy media, because they'll always be there for you. They'll always be there to pick you up and prop you up when you're down. And that's the case for Senator Peterson. There were multiple stories. I think Como News had a story, the Washington State Standard had a story, and of course, King 5, Woke 5 News had a story. And all of them were about the same gist. It was, Senator Peterson was taken out of context. Big bad Fox News took him out of context. Woe is him. This from King 5. Washington Senate Majority Leader says, quote, on youth mental health was taken out of context. And it goes in here, and all the stories were similar, which just tells me that this was a very concerted effort from Senator Jamie Peterson's office to reach out to sympathetic, left-leaning media organizations so that they would all run stories with him accusing Fox News of taking his statements out of context. So King 5 News' story was, as they usually are, very surface level, just giving Jamie Peterson essentially a platform to say, oh, Fox News took me out of context, without really questioning whether he was actually taken out of context. Because apparently Senator Jamie Peterson's staff recorded or taped the interview with Fox News. And so they were out there pushing the transcript and trying to say, see, I was taken out of context. So Washington State Standard and Jerry Cornfield do a lengthier piece about this, but the gist is still the same. And this is what bothers me, is like, Senator Peterson can go to a friendly news outlet and say, I was taken out of context. And rather than judge for themselves whether there's any validity to that and whether they should dedicate a story to it, they're just like, okay, we'll put that out there and let readers decide for themselves if he was taken out of context. But there isn't really any pushback to what he said, any pushback to the reason that people are so angry over what he said. So in the story with the State Standard, I'm going to read quite a bit of this for you because I want you to understand that he was not taken out of context at all. The context is very clear. After reading the full quotes, I'm still just as upset by what he said today as I was yesterday or the day before. And I don't think that it justified a news story where he gets to whine that Fox News took him out of context. So again, this from the State Standard. Washington Senator sparks fury with description of 40-year-old law limiting parental rights. It says, on Monday, in an interview with the Standard, Peterson said it was the first time that, quote, somebody deliberately edited my comments to mislead. He said, I don't think I'll be accepting interview requests from Fox News anymore. It says Dan Springer, the Fox News correspondent who interviewed Peterson, rejected the idea that the senator's comments had been misrepresented. Dan Springer told the Standard, Senator Peterson is being completely dishonest. His response to my question was a defense of the Democrats' actions by paraphrasing the law in Washington state, which says parents are not entitled to be notified if their 13-year-old child receives mental health treatment or if their daughter of any age seeks an abortion. His soundbite was not edited. So here you have, again, setting up this back and forth. Jamie Peterson says, a quote without any proof. It's presented as a truthful statement when Senator Jamie Peterson says, this is the first time somebody deliberately edited my comments to mislead. So it's like the Standard is just accepting this notion that Fox News and Dan Springer, because apparently they're inside his head, and they know that they deliberately edited his content, his quote to mislead. So here's the full quote. Again, the transcript that was provided by Senator Jamie Peterson to the Standard versus the clip that aired on Fox News. And there's no doubt that the soundbite was edited down. I mean, obviously they did a full interview, and this was a cut of that interview that was played within a larger story. So, Nicole, can you play really quick, just so we can compare the two? Just the Senator Peterson soundbite where he's talking about kids over the age of 30, not the pregnant one, the other one.
Kids over 13 have the complete right to make their own decisions about their mental health care. Parents don't have a right to have notice. They don't have a right to have consent about that.
Yeah, so that was what aired on Fox News. And going back to the transcript that was published in the State Standard, it says the question that was asked of Jamie Peterson was, where do you come down on the right of parents to know what they want to know about their child's academic life, their health care, everything? Here's what Senator Jamie Peterson said. If it's about their mental health care, we've drawn a line, I think, at age 13 in the statute and say that kids over 13 have a complete right to make their own decisions about their mental health care. Parents don't have a right to have notice, so they don't have a right to consent about that. How is that any different? So Fox News edited out that first part saying, oh, well, if it's about their mental health care, we've drawn a line, I think, at age 13 in the statute. And then he goes on to say the sentence that aired on Fox News. So it's not out of context at all. It's very clear that in the Fox News story, Senator Jamie Peterson is talking about the law in Washington state. And in the full quote, he's talking about the law in Washington state too. So it's not taking out of context. So the other quote, of course, Nicole, if we can play the one on abortion.
Young women have, if they're old enough to get pregnant, they're old enough to make their own decisions about what happens with their bodies, okay? And parents do not have the right to change that or make a different decision or be notified in advance.
Okay, so that's what aired on Fox News, and according to the Washington State Standard, here is Peterson's full response. When you're talking about a young person's health care, it's a lot more complicated, right? Young women, if they're old enough to get pregnant, they're old enough to make their own decisions about what happens with their bodies, and parents do not have the right to change that or make a different decision or be notified in advance. How is that any different? He just shortens the answer. But lengthening the answer would not have made this any less bad or any less controversial or provided any additional context. So what he's trying to do is put this false flag out there that he was edited out of context when he was very much in context. And I'll also point out, so in the abortion comment, they start this section of the Standard story with Jamie Peterson complaining about the anger over what he said. It says Republicans in Washington fueled the social media firestorm on Peterson's comments. It's always Republicans' fault. Some who weighed in online kept it political. Others got personal. Peterson and his husband have 4 children, and he said the attacks are taking a toll on his family. I signed up for this. I'm not going to be too upset. The hardest part is the effect that it has on my husband and my kids. My kids are reading about how I bought my twins in San Diego on the black market. I don't have twins. I have triplets, he added. They were born in San Diego, so at least they got that right. So here you have Senator Jamie Peterson waxing poetic and sad about a parent, which I don't want any politician's kids to ever be the subject of any sort of smears or lies or really any fodder whatsoever online. But I can't help but point to the irony of, all of this is about parents who are upset that Senator Jamie Peterson wants to take control of their parenting away from them, wants to alienate them from their kids in ways that can be incredibly destructive and hurtful and detrimental. And then you got Senator Jamie Peterson, who's like, oh, this has been really hard for my family. You know how hard it's been for families in Washington state? You know how many stories we've heard of parents who have lost contact with their children because of this allowance under law to be separated? I mean, to let your kid run away from a shelter and the state won't tell you where they are? So I'm sorry, Senator Peterson, I don't want anyone's kids to be wrapped up in anything, but you want the same thing that parents all over the state are asking you for. They want to be able to keep their kids safe. They want their kids to be shielded from things that can be potentially harmful and detrimental to their lives. They're asking no more than you're asking. And somehow you don't realize that. So I hope that does away with the whole notion that Jamie Peterson was taken out of context. But of course, it didn't stop his buddies in the legacy media from propping him up and pushing out these headlines, suggesting, and if you just read the headline, oh, okay, the Fox News clips were out of context, no big deal. And you don't actually sit there and say, were they out of context? And that's the job of the media, right? Senator Peterson's saying something, but look at it for yourself as a member of the media. You don't have to just push it out there and say, you decide for yourselves. No, you can look at that and say, the context of both is the same. And I would also say, Senator Peterson continues to try to get out of this by saying, whoa, I'm just regurgitating state law. Okay, yeah, that's fine, but people are disgusted by the law. That's one of the things we're disgusted about, is not the way that you communicated that and the fact that you said it. We are disgusted about the law. And it's a law you support. So yeah, we're mad at you. We're mad at you and other Democrats who not only support these laws, but who have expanded these laws rapidly over the last 5 years in particular. So you just regurgitating state law doesn't absolve you, because you support that state law and you actively want to expand that state law. And as we speak, you are the chief sponsor on a bill to roll back parental rights. So you don't get out of this one, Senator Peterson. And again, I would say, if you haven't read it, we posted a couple days ago a guest op-ed from State Representative Travis Couture, a Republican, where he explains, look, even though this is part of a 40-year-old law, the law has changed significantly since then when it comes to what kind of access to mental health care kids 13 and over can get without parental consent. He wrote, once that meant, in 1985, talk therapy and substance abuse counseling. But now it's expanded to include gender-affirming medical treatments, psychiatric medications, and reproductive services, all without parental involvement. And so Representative Travis Couture does a wonderful job in that piece of explaining that it is an absolute lie and it's intentional gaslighting to just say, well, this has been the law since 1985. It has not. Part of it has been the law since 1985, and you've expanded it significantly. And I would also say, when he says, Nicole, can you play the clip again on girls getting pregnant? I don't know how many times I can listen to Jamie Peterson say this nonsense over and over, but pregnant one.
Young women have, if they're old enough to get pregnant, they're old enough to make their own decisions about what happens with their bodies, okay? And parents do not have the right to change that or make a different decision or be notified in advance.
Yeah, so parent, no right to know if your kid is pregnant, if your kid gets an abortion, because that's not going to have a substantial mental toll on them if they're as young as 13 years old. And let's just go through the worst case scenario. Again, look what's happening in schools. They want to keep all these secrets from parents. So your kid goes to school and they want an abortion. The school's going to help them work that out. Nobody's going to tell the parent or whatever it is. So we've had all these cases, a lot of them in Washington state lately, about sexual misconduct on the part of teachers, public school teachers. There was just some coach that was convicted of a disgusting slew of crimes. So that is not a rare thing in our state. We hear these headlines all the time. So what happens? You're a pervert teacher and you rape a student because you can't consent as a student to sex with a teacher. 13-year-old student, you get her pregnant. So you can, by law, everybody keeps that secret from parents. Nobody's asking questions. Oh, it's okay. You want to terminate your pregnancy? Teacher tells you, we can help you with that. So a teacher rapes a student, gets them pregnant, and because of the laws in Washington state, that teacher can help that child get an abortion. No parents ever have to know, and everything is just swept under the rug. Call me crazy, call me a conspiracy theorist, but when you look at everything in the totality, that is not beyond the realm of possibility. Now, one other thing I just want to say, and I struggled with whether to even bring this up today. I asked Nicole, I was like, is it fair to bring this up? Because again, I'm not saying that Senator Jamie Peterson's a pervert. I think that's an easy thing for, a lot of conservatives do that. Oh, the Democrats are pedophiles or whatever it is. So I'm not saying that, of course. I don't have any evidence. And it's like a very, very vague, all-encompassing term to apply to a group of people. And I take predatory behavior and child predation very seriously, and I would never just throw that label around. But at the same time, when we talk about judgment here, right? So our friend Ari Hoffman posted this on X yesterday, and I can't even believe I hadn't thought of this before, because I covered this when it was happening, when I was covering City Hall in Seattle as a mainstream journalist. Senator Jamie Peterson was the chief defender of former Seattle Mayor Ed Murray, who was accused of all these sex crimes and preying on young men, etc. So as all of that was happening at the time, and I remember this very vividly now, as all of this was happening at the time, and more evidence came out, more and more accusers came out against Seattle Mayor Ed Murray. Guess who was right by his side, defending him the entire time? State Senator Jamie Peterson, one of his fellow Seattle Democrats. And he even said, and I think is this a Seattle Times story? Yeah, I want to read some portions of a Seattle Times story from February of 2018, as this was all coming to a head with Ed Murray. And it talks about, I was at this press conference. I guarantee you can see me in this picture if it's in here. I was at this press conference when Ed Murray said, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't, continue to, under all these accusations, serve as mayor. The headline was, "Relief as Ed Murray exits public life, pain as Seattle copes with scandal." It says, Jamie Peterson, a Democratic state senator, said some of his Seattle constituents have demanded that he retract past statements in which he called Murray a good lawmaker and mayor. Peterson has refused. He said in an interview describing Murray as a human being just like the rest of us, made of a unique combination of attributes and faults. The Seattle Times went on to say, Murray's lasting work should be recognized, Peterson said. I would strongly disagree with the idea that his legacy of public service can be erased by these allegations, even if they are true. There are a whole lot of people in Washington who enjoy employment and non-discrimination protections that they would not have had or wouldn't have had as quickly but for his leadership. So this is 6 years ago when Seattle is embroiled in one of the worst political scandals we've ever had, with horrible accusations coming one after another about Mayor Ed Murray that forced him to walk away from public life. And there cheering him on, essentially, was Senator Jamie Peterson, saying, and I can't make that up, even if they are true, that it shouldn't have ruined Ed Murray's legacy. Can you think about that? Even if it's true that Seattle Mayor Ed Murray preyed on young men, it shouldn't ruin his legacy. That's a very strange thing to say. That's a very concerning thing to say. And so now this is the state senator who is spearheading the effort to tear parents away from their kids, who's on Fox News saying parents have no right to know. Oh, if you're old enough to bleed, then you're old enough to make your own medical decisions if you're a woman. And I think that's relevant because it's a judgment issue. This is a guy who said that Ed Murray's legacy should still be intact even if the allegations against him were true. Is that the guy that you want deciding what kind of rights you have as a parent? Is that the guy that you want deciding what kind of autonomy your 13 and 14 and 15 and 16 and 17-year-olds have? I could tell you if I had a kid, it would not be. I wouldn't want him within 100 miles of making any sort of decisions about the rights of me as a parent or the rights of my child.